and welcome to Story Station. I'm Mr. Jim, your conductor today. Glad you could be with me. Today, we're going to be reading a wonderful story called Do You Have a Hat? By Aline Spinelli, illustrated by Geraldo Valerio, and it is brought to us from our friends at Simon & Schuster Publications. Thank you so much for allowing us to read it, and I want to make sure you're ready to go. Since I'm a little late today, let's make sure our reading lights are on, shall we? Right? We have these here, and we cup our C's and put them behind our ears to let me know you're listening really well, right? Okay. And then, in case I want to ask you something, you want to click that voice box so I can hear you. Respond. Does that sound good? Good. All right. Well, let's sing our song about books. You know how it goes. And it starts with the titles on the front. The titles on the front. Hi-ho, a biblio. The titles on the front. The author writes the words. The author writes the words. Hi-ho, a biblio. The author writes the words. And the illustrator draws. The illustrator draws. Hi-ho, a biblio. The illustrator draws. And the spine binds the book. The spine binds the book. Hi-ho, a biblio. The spine binds the book. And now it's time to read. Oh, now it's time to read. Hi-ho, a biblio. Now it's time to read. All right, today, this book features people in hats, but not just any old person. Lots of people from history. Some of them may be new to you, and others may be people that you're familiar with already from going to school. So we see here, it's winter time, so she's wearing a fun hat to protect her from the cold, like you or I would do in winter. And on the inside, we see some of the people that are going to be featured in this book. And they are presidents and poets and entertainers and astronauts. So we have a lot to find out about today. And all of them had hats. Do you have a hat? I bet you do. Do you have a hat? Something fuzzy, warm, and red to keep the snowflakes off your head? Or maybe floppy brimmed in blue when summer shines down on you. Do you have a hat? Francisco de Goya had a hat with candles on the brim. That doesn't look very safe, does it? A clever hat that suited him, that made a chandelier of light for painting far into the night. Do you have a hat? So Francisco de Goya was a famous artist, Spanish artist. Igor Stravinsky had a hat, a tattered, battered green beret. He wore it every single day. They say it never left his head, not even when he went to bed. And Igor Stravinsky, can you see what maybe his job was? Right, he was a composer. Carmen Miranda had a towering hat of plums and cherries, peaches, oranges, and berries, plump bananas by the bunch. A hat her friends could eat for lunch. Do you have a hat? Carmen Miranda was a famous entertainer in the 1940s. Abraham Lincoln had a hat, a stovepipe hat, black and tall, a presidential carryall. Abe Lincoln wore it around the town with documents inside the crown. Do you have a hat? So Abraham Lincoln, you may know, our 16th president, and it is true. Sometimes he put speeches and other paperwork in his hat, and he wore it, so we always know where it'd be. Nat Love had a hat, a cowboy hat to wear, of course, or carry water to his horse, or give a pesky fly a slap, or play the pillow for his nap. Do you have a hat? Now, Nat Love is a famous cowboy. He's one of the first African-American cowboys. And I wonder if you notice something else about this book, boys and girls, with our words and our patterns. Right, it rhymes. See if you can pick out the rhyming words. Isabel of Bavaria had a hat, a cone-shaped hat so very high, it poked a gargoyle in the eye. The doorways had to be redone so that she could fit through every one. Do you have a hat? Walt Whitman had a hat, a rather old and shabby hat, at times a makeshift table mat for writing poems in the sun or eating supper on the run. And there is Walt Whitman, a famous poet. And if you notice here in the book, hard to see, but it says Leaves of Grass, which is his most famous poem. Louis Comte had a hat to close his magic act. A normal-looking hat, in fact, but reaching in, as was his habit, Louis produced a bunny rabbit. Now, Louis Comte was a Frenchman and a magician, and he is credited as the first magician to pull a rabbit from his hat as a magic trick. John Chapman had a hat. They say he wore a cooking pot. Some folks believe that, some do not. If true, he was a sight indeed, a pot-topped sower of apple seed. Now, John Chapman, he had another name that we often know him by, which is what? Johnny Appleseed. He planted apple trees by using those apple seeds that are in his sack right here. But I don't know if he wore a pot on his head. Amelia Earhart had a hat. So did Daniel Boone, it's true. Charlie Chaplin, Sally Ride, all of them had hats. Do you? If they talk about Sally Ride, do you know who she is? She's the first woman in space. She's an astronaut. Do you have a hat? A fancy hat? A hat that's plain? A hat for walking in the rain? A hat with feathers, flowers, bows. A hat that hoots. A hat that glows. A magic hat? A cap? A crown? A country hat? A hat for town? A single hat, squashed flat or tall. Look at all these different kinds of hats. Is better than no hat at all. Oh, and that's our book for today. Do you have a hat? By Aline Spinelli. Again, brought to us by our friends at Simon & Schuster Books. I'm so glad that you could join me today as I put on a World Series winning hat. That's my hat for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time, right here on Story Station.